Hey everyone, I'm David Finz. And on this episode of the Cyber Insurance Imperative, it's 23 and don't let this happen to you. As reported by TechCrunch, Fox Business, and a number of other media outlets, one of the leading DNA registries is facing over 30 lawsuits stemming from a massive data breach, and it's taking a particularly strident tone with its customers. In this episode, we're going to focus on what your company can do up front to minimize the likelihood and impact of such an event. Last month, the company in question acknowledged that hackers managed to access about 14,000 user accounts using brute force attacks with passwords associated with the customers in question from other accounts of theirs that had been breached in the past, a method of attack known to cyber geeks as credential stuffing. That doesn't seem like a whole lot of accounts, but here's where things get interesting. Through these accounts, the hackers were then able to access the data of nearly 7 million additional users who had opted into a feature that allowed them to share information with relatives. This amounted to almost half the company's customer base. That means all these other people whose accounts were not directly hacked ended up having their information leaked. Now, normally this is the part of the story where the company issues a statement reassuring customers that it takes the privacy of their data seriously and will take every reasonable step to make sure that they don't suffer from identity theft, right? Well, not exactly. Media reports indicate that the company sent a letter to a group of plaintiffs stating that, and I quote, users negligently recycled and failed to update their passwords following these past security incidents, end quote. The letter goes on to state that the compromise of the customer's data was therefore not the result of the company's alleged failure to maintain reasonable security measures. Predictably, the plaintiff's lawyers have blasted the letter as nonsensical and finger-pointing. They also state that the company should have implemented some of the safeguards available to protect against credential stuffing. But what are those safeguards? Well, the most obvious one is to require multi-factor authentication for all users. This isn't just good for halting credential stuffing attacks either. According to a study released by the cybersecurity company Arctic Wolf, 58% of all business email compromise incidents that they handled in 2022 were against companies that had failed to implement MFA. Now, to be fair, the company in question here did start mandating MFA of its users after the incident was discovered. And there are other steps that businesses can take as well. Things like using managed detection and response to identify suspicious activity on their network and monitoring the dark web for stolen data. In this case, the company may have been following the advice of their legal counsel to attempt to shift liability, but from a public relations standpoint, it might not be a winning strategy. Think back to the Tylenol scare in the 1980s. Johnson & Johnson's handling of that incident is still a textbook example of crisis management. They took ownership of the problem, created tamper-resistant packaging, and educated consumers about how to identify and communicate any safety concerns. For a company that is now facing litigation as well as damage to its brand, these would seem like valuable lessons to keep in mind. Now, I have no idea what kind of incident response plan may have been in place at that company, but I can tell you that these are the types of scenarios that the Alliant Risk Consulting team will help you work through so that you can take control of the narrative, manage the inevitable crisis that arises from a cyber event, and minimize any disruption to your business. To learn more about our services in the area of incident response planning and tabletop exercises, you can DM me on LinkedIn or email me at david.finz@alliant.com. It's just one more way that Alliant helps you find the more rewarding way to manage risk. Thanks for watching.